Both candidates tournaments, Open and Women, begin on the 29th of March. So between now and then, I'm going to be previewing those tournaments, and let's start with the Open. And here are the 8 players in a ranking order based on their current live ELO rating. So we have Matthias Bluebaum at number 8, right up to Hikaru Nakamura as number 1 seed based on their live rating. This is a double round all-play-all tournament, 14 games in total, and there's a classical time control of 40 moves in 2 hours, and then 30 minutes is added to the clock, plus 30 seconds per move after move 41. So just to be clear, or from move 41, just to be clear, there is no increment up to the first time control at move 40. So in this video, I'd like to feature the number 8 seed. That's Matthias Bluebaum from Germany. He's 28 years old. And the last German player to qualify for the candidates was Robert Hübner, who lost a match against Jan Timman in 1991. So that's 35 years ago. Well, for such a strong chess nation as Germany, that's really quite remarkable that there hasn't been a player in the candidates for 35 years. Everyone thought it was going to be Vincent Keymer, but no, it's Matthias Bluebaum. So last March 2025, Blübaum won the European Individual Championship. That's the second time he managed to win that prestigious title. The first time it's in 2022. So listen, he didn't come from nowhere. And he was German Blitz champion 4 times in a row from 2020 to 2023. And that's an achievement in a country that I think specialises in Blitz, actually. And also says something about Blübaum's quick sight of the board. And it's interesting to see that during these, really strong classical events, like the Tata Steel Masters, like the World Cup, like the Grand Swiss tournaments in Samarkand, you can see that Blübaum plays online Blitz tournaments. He obviously feels that it's a good way to maintain his sharpness. So Blübaum is a mathematician, and for a long time combined his university studies with his chess career. But having completed his masters, he's been able to devote himself to chess completely, and it shows. So his rating has risen steadily so that he's now close to 2700. He qualified for the candidates by scoring 7.5 out of 11 at the FIDE Grand Swiss tournament in Samarkand. That was last August. He came equal second, but edged out the others with a superior tiebreak. He had really strong opponents. So what I wanted to do is go through some of the games that he played in that tournament, and that'll give us a good idea of what we can expect to see from Matthias Bluebaum. In the first 2 rounds of the FIDE Grand Swiss, Matthias Bluebaum scored 2 solid draws. Then in the 3rd round, he played against Jon Ludvig Hammer from Norway. So Bluebaum playing white. You can see he's made an unpretentious start with white. Nice solid pawn chain. He opened with d4. And then he's got the 2 bishops, so he just played his bishop back to put a little bit of pressure on the pawn on c7. And Hammer decided, okay, I'm going to go for it. c5, and after pawn takes pawn, well, he decided not to saddle himself with an isolated pawn, but instead just played bishop a6. So trying to shake things up a bit. But Bluebaum took this, and then very happily took on b6. Then knight e4, but no panic, rook d1. The only thing is white is yet to castle. But Bluebaum negotiated this very well. That forced a queen exchange. And basically he cleaned up. This is move 20. In fact, Hammer resigned after 24 moves. So efficient technique, that was quite a gift for Blübaum, although he did play very accurately there. Then in the next round, Blübaum faced Enriquez, and again, solid opening from Blübaum. He played the Petrov, but he relies on his excellent technique, and after 20 moves, they had just kind of an interesting middle game position. And Queen f6 was played, so it went into quite a complex endgame, but Blübaum slowly outplayed his opponent, and well, by the end we had a situation where there were 3 pawns on the queen side rushing down the board against 2 on the king side, but it's quite clear that black was going to win this race. So after 4 rounds, Blübaum had 3 out of 4. Then he faced a very serious test. So he had white against Pragyanananda. Now Prag clearly wanted to target him, and after d4 he played something very tricky. Bishop b4 check, and then he took on c3 without even being asked, and then played f5. So Prag is going for it. So this is quite a risky way to play, very ambitious strategically, because you damage these pawns and you try to control e4, but it's risky because you give up your lovely dark squared bishop and you might sort of weaken yourself a little bit. Blübaum played e4 and then recovered the pawn straight away. But after these moves, well, Prag, I think, had already equalised the position and had decent play. But Blübaum played solidly, and after 33 moves, they had arrived at this end game. So it's still even material. It looks like this is drifting towards a draw. So Prag to play, for example, if he just brings this knight back to a4, and there's a chance perhaps to come to b2, perhaps the knight will just sit solidly on c5. I think it's going to be a draw. The king will come into the middle, but there's nothing too dangerous for either side. But clearly Prag still wanted to test Blübaum, and he tried b5. So I think he must have been hoping for an exchange, and then maybe this knight gets into a position where it can threaten some pawns. But here Blübaum kept his head and played c5. Nice temporary pawn sacrifice. And after knight takes pawn, knight c6. Now it's getting tricky. You can see this isn't a very beautiful arrangement. And this knight is looking at the a7 pawn. So bishop b7, that's a good move, giving back the pawn. And now black should play knight f4. The computer says this is equal, but this is tricky, with this pawn perhaps rushing towards the corner. Anyway, Prag clearly didn't like it and played c6, but after this, he's in massive trouble. Bishop e4, good move, threatening to exchange and then take on b5, and that's going to be a winning position. So the game went knight c3. Of course, if the knight comes back here, then knight takes b5 is possible, exploiting the pin. So knight c3, but after this, white is just a pawn up. And you can see that all these squares are covered, so it's not possible to bring the king to attack. And basically Blübaum was a pawn up, and his excellent technique brought the win. So next up, another Indian player, another very strong Indian star, Arjun Erigaisi. Now Erigaisi played like this. Blübaum went d5. So again, very solid opening from Blübaum. We've seen the Petrov, and now we're seeing the black side of a Catalan. And Blübaum clearly knows his openings very well. He had a nice little system here. After 25 moves, that position was on the board. Now, very often the Catalan can just kind of fizzle out to a draw. But, well, if black plays correctly. But this one is starting to look very tense. I would say all three results are possible from this position because, black's king, well, it's not bad, but, a little bit airy. That knight nicely stationed on g5. Then again, there's a bishop here. Bishop f6 might come to target b2. It's very double-edged. Now, Erigaisi should either play bishop c1 or bishop f4. He's got to get the bishop out of the way. Instead, he took on a7. Okay, so I think we should have a think and drink moment. So if you were playing black, Matthias Bluebaum, how would you play here as black? Cheers. I've seen many chessboards in my life, but when I heard about this one, I was keen to see it for myself. It's beautiful and completely wireless, thanks to an integrated battery and Bluetooth connection. For my edition, I wanted pieces that reflect clarity. When I play with them, everything feels natural. Just me, the board, and the game I love. This is my supreme chess set, the Daniel King edition. In fact, there are two good moves for black here. One is to play knight f4, and the tactics work in black's favour. After this, check. Rook takes d2. Basically, this is just a very good position for black. This is hanging. Or bishop takes here. Okay, you can give the queen, but black obviously has winning chances there. But I think Bluebaum's move was better than this. He played bishop a8, and this really does give him a winning position. It's quite a subtle winning move. So rook takes queen, threatened. Problem is the queen simply doesn't have a good square. It's a very unusual tactic because after queen d4, there's knight f6, so a skewer. Going to pick up the bishop. After queen a6, there's knight c7. So the knight attacks the queen and the rook attacks the bishop. And if queen a4, again, knight b6 attacks the queen, a discovered attack on the bishop, and you win a piece. So Erigaisi decided, okay, I'm going to ditch a knight and bring the queen back. Now after knight b6, queen c2. So if rook takes, then stuff happens over here. But there's no need to get involved in that. King f7. And Blübaum was a piece up. Now it's 2 pawns for the piece, but Blübaum's technique was really excellent, and he kept control very nicely indeed. He's managed to get 1 pawn back straight away, and yeah, he brought the game very safely to a win. So far we've seen that he plays solid open. Blübaum plays solid openings. The Catalan, the Petrov with black, plays d4 with white. He's tactically sharp, as we've seen here. His endgame technique is very good. He showed that against Prague, against Enriquez. And he calculates well. So I don't think he's a spectacular player, but he will take advantage of any opportunity going. So anyway, after 7 rounds, Blübaum led the tournament with 5.5 points, and he went super solid then. He held off Nihal Sarin, he held off Abdusatorov, okay, very strong players. And then came a slice of luck that every successful chess player needs. He faced Vincent Keymer. Now let's have a look at that game now. he had a difficult position with black and got outplayed. He hung on and reached an endgame where he had these 2 pawns against 3 pawns. But Keymer is in his element, grinding away. I mean, these pawns are isolated. And the game went like this. Rook b7, king e6. So Blübaum hanging on as best he can, but Keymer is making progress. And here he plunged in with rook h7, going for this pawn straight away. Blunder. Keymer allowed this little trick, knight takes g3, which Blübaum saw. After king takes, then there's rook d3 check, and you pick up this piece. So Keymer played rook h6 check, tried knight b1, didn't help. And, well, he's still a pawn up, but this rook and pawn in game, with a little bit of care, is a draw, basically. And they agree to draw here. Great pity for Keymer if he played knight e4 here instead of going for the immediate rook h7. It still requires some painstaking precision to win this position, but it can be done. So that was Matthias Bluebaum's little bit of luck, but he earned it because he'd already had a very tough defense and he'd shown enormous determination just to reach this far. In the final round, he faced Alireza Firuzja. Again, very, very tough opponent. And Firuzja went for him. So Blübaum playing white, Firuzja playing black. You can see Firuzja has these double rooks on the 7th. Mate is threatened. But Blübaum defended very nicely. Technically, he's really good. So rook e2, he found. Nice move. So if that's taken, get a queen. And king takes, it's going to be a draw. And the game went after rook e2, rook a1 check. Rook came back, check. Rook was taken in this way. Again, you make a queen. Rook here, here. Well, black can win a pawn, but yeah, this is nice technique. Blübaum appreciated that actually this is a very simple way to make a draw because the king simply can't escape because, well, these pieces just are in a right jam. And the game ended like this. And Blübaum could even exchange rooks here and play f4, and of course just reducing it to 1 pawn is just a draw. And they agree to draw here. So, what are Blübaum's qualities? Great calculating ability, and that comes through in his excellent technique. And, you know, spots tactics very well. He's really gritty. He showed that in holding off these elite players like Pragg, Abdusatorov, Erigaisi, Keymer, and in the final round, Firuzja. He has a sound positional understanding. Unpretentious, very solid, well-worked opening repertoire. And when given the opportunity, he can attack. So Anish Giri, commenting on Blübaum's qualification, said something like he was glad that Blübaum had qualified, as it would mean that the other players in the candidates would have to try and beat him, as you know he's the weakest player, and that will make the tournament more interesting. But Giri proved in the Tata Steel Masters that that is a dangerous attitude. Let me just show you. Let me remind you of what happened. So, in this position, well, Giri tried this very risky opening. It reminded me a little bit of Pragg's opening, but this was even riskier. Remember this one? I did give a video on this. And, well, Blübaum played very sharply And in this position, Blübaum calculated brilliantly. Knight g2, rook f3, and then very unexpected move, bishop e2. And then it was a brilliant finish. I love this. And then this fantastic move, rook e4. I love the way this rook has shuffled here. Very delicate steps. And in this position, well, the queen it's attacked. It has to maintain the attack, the defense of the knight on e7. Can't do. And basically, Giri had to give up his queen and lost very, very quickly. That was the final position. So Blübaum can attack. You know, he shows great calculating skills. In general, I don't think he's the most spectacular player, but we can see that he's really not to be underestimated. And after the FIDE Grand Swiss, Blübaum said, "I'll be an underdog, so everyone else who's playing in the candidates will probably be happy to have me there." But on a more serious note, this tournament showed that if everything works and I'm in good shape, I can score wins. Absolutely, he can score wins. So I think it's going to be very interesting to have Matthias Bluebaum in the tournament.